Hey there, everyone. Get ready because I'm about to tell you an awesome story that's going to grab your attention and not let go. It's a sunny Saturday morning, and we're in a little place called Oakwood Hills. It's one of those quiet neighborhoods where people mow their lawns, kids ride bikes, and everyone's supposed to follow the rules. Or at least, that's what they think. That's where I come in. My name's Jake, and I'm just a regular guy, or so it seems. I live here, trying to mind my own business and enjoy my days. But there's one person who doesn't see me that way. Her name's Karen, and she's the boss of our neighborhood group called the HOA. That stands for Homeowners Association, but to me, it might as well mean head of annoying. Karen always carries a clipboard, like it's stuck to her hand with glue. To her, I'm just that guy with the beat-up car. She looks at my old sedan and wrinkles her nose, like it's the worst thing she's ever seen. But here's the fun part: she doesn't know the truth about me. And honestly, I kind of like keeping it that way for now. Let me tell you a little secret about my car. It's not just any old car. It's special. My beat-up sedan? It's actually an unmarked police vehicle. Yup, you heard that right. I'm a police officer, and that car is what I use for my job. It's supposed to look plain and normal so no one suspects anything. And me? I've got a badge and everything. But SHH, nobody in Oakwood Hills knows that yet. Not Karen, not my neighbors, not even the mailman. It's my little secret, and I'm keeping it quiet until the perfect moment. Can you imagine what Karen would say if she found out? Oh boy, that's going to be fun. Before we dive into this crazy story, I've got a question for you. Have you ever had someone look at you and think they know everything about you, but they're totally wrong? Like maybe they see your messy hair or old shoes and decide you're not important. What would you do if someone judged you without knowing the real you? Think about that for a second while we get rolling into this mess. Oh, and one more thing, drop a hi in the comments below and tell me where you're watching from. If you like stories where people get a big surprise, stick around, because this one's going to be a wild ride. Okay, let's set the scene a little more. Oakwood Hills is super peaceful most of the time. The houses are neat, with green grass and flowers in the yards. Birds chirp, and sometimes you can hear lawnmowers buzzing. Kids play outside, riding bikes or kicking balls. It's the kind of place where you'd think everyone gets along. But not with Karen around. She's like the ruler of this little world. She walks around with her clipboard, checking everything. If your grass is too long, she writes it down. If your trash can stays out past pickup day, she's knocking on your door. And if she doesn't like how your car looks, watch out. That's where I come in. My car isn't shiny or new. It's old, with a few scratches and dents. It's gray and boring, and that's on purpose. See, as a police officer, I don't want a fancy car that screams, "Hey, look at me." My job is to blend in, to look normal, so I can do my work without anyone noticing. But Karen? She doesn't care about that. To her, my car is a problem, a big ugly spot in her perfect neighborhood. The first time I met Karen was a few weeks after I moved here. I was unloading boxes from my car when she marched right up to me. She had her clipboard in one hand and a pen in the other, tapping it like she was ready to write me a ticket. "Hi there," she said, but it wasn't a friendly hi. Her voice was sharp, like a teacher scolding a kid. "I'm Karen, president of the HOA. That car of yours, it doesn't fit our standards here." I looked at her, then at my car, and just shrugged. "It gets me around," I said with a little smile. She didn't smile back. "Well," she huffed, "we have rules. Vehicles need to look nice, or they can't stay on the street. I'll be watching." Then she turned and walked away, her shoes clicking on the sidewalk. I stood there, thinking, okay, Karen, you do that. I wasn't mad. Not yet. I figured she'd get bored and leave me alone. Boy, was I wrong. After that day, Karen made it her mission to bug me about my car. Every time she saw it parked outside, she'd frown and scribble something on her clipboard. Sometimes she'd leave little notes on my windshield. They'd say things like, "Please move this vehicle," or "This car is an eyesore." An eyesore. Can you believe that? My car isn't pretty, sure, but it's not hurting anyone. It just sits there, minding its own business. I'd peel off her notes and toss them in the trash, chuckling to myself. She had no idea what she was messing with. See, I could have told her right then, "Hey, Karen, this is a police car, so back off." But where's the fun in that? I decided to let her keep going, to see how far she'd take it. It was like a game, her thinking she's the big boss, and me knowing I've got a secret she'd never guess. Now, let's talk about me for a minute. I'm not the kind of guy who brags or shows off. I like keeping things simple. I wear plain clothes most days, jeans, a t-shirt, maybe a jacket if it's chilly. My hair's a little messy, and I don't shave every day, so I've got some stubble. People probably look at me and think, "Oh, he's just some regular dude." And that's fine by me. At work, I'm a police officer, and I'm good at my job. I help people, catch bad guys, and keep things safe. But when I'm home in Oakwood Hills, I'm just Jake. I don't flash my badge or talk about being a cop. Why? Because I don't need to. I like my quiet life here, well, quiet until Karen shows up, anyway. My car fits that too. It's old and scratched up because it's supposed to be. Unmarked police cars aren't shiny or fancy. They're made to look like any other car on the road. Mine's got a little rust on the edges and a dent from when I bumped a pole last year. Inside, it's got police stuff radios, lights you can't see unless I turn them on, and a spot for my gear. But from the outside, it's just a boring gray sedan. Perfect for my job, but not so perfect for Karen's rules. She'd walk by and shake her head, muttering things like, "This junk doesn't belong here." Junk. I'd hear her and think, "Oh, Karen, you're in for a surprise one day." The neighborhood was pretty cool otherwise. My neighbors were nice enough. There's Mr. Thompson next door, who's always watering his flowers. He'd wave at me and say, "Morning, Jake." Across the street, there's a family with 2 kids who ride their bikes up and down the block. They'd grin and shout, "Hi, Jake," when they saw me. Everyone was friendly except Karen. She didn't wave or smile. She just watched, waiting for someone to break her precious rules. And to her, I was the biggest rule breaker of all because of that car. So, that's how it started, me, my secret police car, and Karen with her clipboard. It was a sunny Saturday morning, like I said, and I was just chilling. I had no idea what was coming. Karen was about to take things way too far, and I was about to have the last laugh. But we're not there yet. This is just the beginning, the part where you get to know me and why Karen picked the wrong guy to mess with. Can you picture it? A quiet street, a beat-up car, and a lady who thinks she's in charge of everything? It's like the start of a movie, right? And trust me, the best parts are still ahead. Let's keep this fun going. Imagine you're in my shoes for a second. You've got a car that looks old and junky, but it's secretly super important. And someone like Karen keeps bugging you about it? Would you tell her the truth right away, or would you wait, like me, to see what happens? I bet some of you would love to see her face when she finds out. That's what I was thinking too. Every time she glared at my car, I'd imagine the day she'd realize she was wrong. It kept me smiling, even when she was being her most annoying self. Oh, and speaking of annoying, let me tell you about this one time. Oops, I almost jumped ahead. Let's save that for later. Right now, it's still that sunny Saturday, and I'm just a guy with a secret, living in a neighborhood run by clipboard Karen. The air smells like fresh cut grass, the sun's warm, and I'm thinking it's going to be a good day. I'm wrong, though, because Karen's about to stir up some trouble. Big trouble. But don't worry, I've got this under control. Or at least, I hope I do. So, what do you think so far? Are you Team Jake or Team Karen? Ha, just kidding, I bet you're all on my side already. She's not exactly the hero here, is she? Anyway, stick with me, because this story's about to get even better. That question I asked earlier, what would you do if someone judged you without knowing you? Keep it in your mind. Maybe you've got a story of your own where you proved someone wrong. I'd love to hear it later. For now, we're just getting started in Oakwood Hills, and the fun's about to kick up a notch. Ready? Let's see what happens next. Karen was like the queen of rules in our neighborhood. She didn't just walk around, she strutted, like she owned every house, every tree, every blade of grass. Her nose was always up in the air, and her clipboard was her crown. She loved telling people what to do. If kids were riding bikes too fast, she'd yell, "Slow down right now." If someone's lawn wasn't perfectly mowed, she'd glare at it like it was a monster. She'd even knock on doors to complain about little things, like a trash can left out too long. Everyone knew Karen, and most people just rolled their eyes and tried to stay out of her way. But me? Oh no, I couldn't escape her. I was her favorite target, and it was all because of my car. Every single time Karen saw my old gray sedan parked on the street, she'd stop dead in her tracks. Her face would scrunch up, like she just smelled something stinky like rotten eggs or old socks. She'd stare at my car with her hands on her hips, shaking her head. "That junker doesn't belong here," she'd snap, her voice loud and sharp. Then she'd pull out one of her bright orange warning stickers from her clipboard. She'd slap it right onto my windshield, pressing it down hard like she was proud of herself. Those stickers were big and ugly, with bold black letters that said things like "violation" or "move this vehicle." She thought they made her look important, I guess. But me? I didn't care. I'd walk outside, see the sticker, and just smile. I'd nod at her, peel it off with my fingers, and toss it in the trash without saying a word. It was like a little game we played, her sticking stuff on my car, and me taking it off like it was no big deal. Karen didn't know the truth, though. She looked at my scratched up car and thought, "This guy's a lazy nobody." She figured I was too broke to fix it or buy something nicer. To her, I was just some dude who didn't fit into her perfect little neighborhood. She'd squint at me through her glasses and mutter things under her breath, like, "People like him ruin everything." Oh, Karen, if only you knew. My car wasn't junk, it was an unmarked police vehicle, and I was a cop. But I didn't tell her that. Not yet. I kept my secret tucked away, like a surprise gift waiting for the right moment to be opened. And trust me, that moment was coming. The tension between us was growing bigger every day. It felt like a storm cloud hanging over Oakwood Hills, getting darker and heavier. You know how the air feels thick before a big rain? That's what it was like. Karen wasn't just annoyed with me, she was mad. And she wasn't quiet about it either. One day, she marched right up to my front door, her shoes stomping on the sidewalk. She banged on the door with her fist, and when I opened it, she was huffing and puffing like she'd just run a race. Her face was red, and her eyes were narrow. "Move that eyesore, or I'll have it towed," she barked, pointing at my car like it was a pile of garbage. An eyesore. She kept calling it that, like my car was so ugly it hurt her eyes to look at it. I just stood there in my doorway, looking at her all worked up. I shrugged my shoulders and said, "Sure thing, Karen," in my calmest voice. Then I closed the door and went back inside. But here's the funny part: inside my head, I was laughing. Not a little giggle, but a big, loud laugh that I had to keep locked up so she wouldn't hear. She was so bossy, so sure she was right, and she had no idea what was coming her way. My car wasn't going anywhere, and I wasn't scared of her threats. Why? Because I knew something she didn't. That junker she hated so much. It was mine for a reason. It was part of my job, and nobody, not even Queen Karen, could tow a police car without getting into big trouble. But I didn't tell her that. I let her keep talking, keep sticking her stickers, keep stomping around. What do you think? Was I wrong to let her dig her own grave like that? Should I have warned her, or was it more fun to wait and see? Let's keep going and find out what happens next. Karen didn't stop with the stickers and the door knocking. Oh no, she took it up a notch. She started watching me like a hawk. Every time I drove home from work and parked my car, I'd see her peeking out her window. Her curtains would twitch, and there she'd be, staring at me with that grumpy face. Sometimes she'd come outside and stand on her porch, arms crossed, just watching. It was creepy, but also kind of funny. I'd wave at her, all friendly like, and say, "Hey, Karen. Nice day, huh?" She'd huff and turn away, like I'd insulted her. I think she hated that I wasn't mad or scared. It drove her nuts that I didn't argue or yell back. But why would I? I had my secret, and it made me feel like I was winning, even when she thought she was. The neighbors started noticing too. Mr. Thompson, the old guy next door who loved his flowers, caught me outside one day. He was watering his roses and chuckled. "That Karen sure has it out for you, Jake," he said, shaking his head. "What's her deal with your car?" I grinned and said, "Oh, she just thinks it's ugly. No biggie." He laughed and went back to his watering. Across the street, the mom with the 2 bike-riding kids asked me about it too. "Why's Karen always mad at you?" she said one afternoon while her kids zoomed around. I shrugged and said, "She doesn't like my car, I guess." The mom rolled her eyes. "She's so picky. Don't let her get to you." I smiled and said, "Don't worry, I won't." Everyone could see Karen was being a grump, but nobody knew why I wasn't bothered. That was my little trick. I had something up my sleeve, and it kept me cool as a cucumber. Days turned into weeks, and Karen didn't let up. She'd walk by my house every morning, clipboard in hand, checking on my car. If it was parked even a tiny bit off from where she liked, she'd slap another orange sticker on it. I'd come out, peel it off, and wave at her like nothing happened. "Morning, Karen." I'd call out. She'd glare and march off. It was the same thing over and over, like a silly dance we were doing. Sticker on, sticker off. Glare, wave. Huff, smile. I could tell she was getting madder each time. Her face would turn pink, then red, like a tomato ripening right in front of me. She'd mutter things I couldn't quite hear, but I'd catch words like lazy or trash. She really thought I was some loser who didn't care. Oh, how wrong she was. One time, she got extra bold. It was a sunny afternoon, and I was washing dishes in my kitchen. I looked out the window and saw her standing by my car with a tape measure. A tape measure. She was measuring how far my car was from the curb, scribbling numbers on her clipboard like she was solving a big mystery. I almost dropped my sponge from laughing so hard. What was she going to do, give me a math test? I watched her for a minute, her head bobbing up and down as she measured and wrote. Then she stuck 2 orange stickers on my windshield, 1 on each side. She stepped back, nodded to herself, and walked away with a smug little smile. I shook my head and thought, "Karen, you're working so hard for nothing." But I didn't go out there right away. I let those stickers sit, just to see what she'd do next. The tension kept building, like a rubber band stretching tighter and tighter. I could feel it every time I saw her. She wasn't just bugging me now, she was on a mission. She wanted my car gone, and she wasn't going to stop until she won. Or at least, until she thought she won. Her threats got louder too. "I'll have it towed," she'd shout whenever she saw me. "This is your last warning, Jake." Last warning? She'd said that at least 10 times already. I'd just nod and say, "Okay, Karen," like always. But inside, I was cracking up. Tow my car? Good luck with that. She had no clue she was picking a fight she couldn't win. And me? I wasn't worried one bit. I was waiting, letting her pile up her own trouble, 1 sticker at a time. What do you think about that? Was I being sneaky by not telling her the truth? Or was it smart to let her keep going? Imagine you're me for a second. Someone's bossing you around, thinking they're better than you, but you've got a secret they don't know. Would you spill it right away, or would you wait for the perfect moment to surprise them? I bet some of you are thinking, "Jake, just tell her already." But where's the fun in that? I wanted Karen to figure it out the hard way, and trust me, she was getting closer every day. The storm cloud was about to burst, and when it did, oh boy, it was going to be a big one. So, there we were in Oakwood Hills, Karen strutting around like a queen, me pretending to be a regular guy, and my car sitting there like a ticking time bomb. She thought she was in charge, but I knew better. Every glare, every sticker, every huff and puff was just another step toward her big surprise. And I couldn't wait to see her face when it happened. Stick with me, because this story's heating up, and the best part's still coming. What do you think she'll do next? Let's find out together. Weeks passed, one after another, like pages flipping in a book. The sun came up, the sun went down, and Karen kept coming after me. She wasn't happy with just stomping around and slapping stickers on my car anymore. Nope, she decided to step it up. One day, I started finding little notes tucked under my windshield wipers. They weren't nice notes, like "have a great day." Oh no, these were nasty. The first one I found said, "Last warning," in big, angry letters. I pulled it off, read it, and laughed a little. Last warning? She'd been saying that forever. I crumpled it up into a tiny ball and tossed it into the trash can by my porch. No big deal, right? But then, a couple days later, there was another one. This time it said, towing scheduled. I stared at it for a second, imagining Karen writing it with her pen, all smug and proud. I shook my head, crumpled it up, and threw it away just like the first one. Towing scheduled? Sure, Karen. I wasn't worried. She wouldn't dare touch my car, or at least, that's what I thought. See, I knew my car was special. It wasn't just some old junker, it was an unmarked police vehicle. That meant it was mine for my job as a cop, and nobody could mess with it without getting into trouble. Karen didn't know that, though. She thought it was just a beat-up sedan that I was too lazy to fix. Every time I threw away one of her notes, I'd smile to myself, thinking, go ahead and try, Karen. You'll see. I wasn't scared of her threats because I had my secret, and it made me feel like I was one step ahead. She could write all the notes she wanted, I wasn't moving my car, and I wasn't sweating it. But Karen? She wasn't done yet. She was like a dog with a bone, and she wasn't letting go. One sunny afternoon, I caught her doing something sneaky. I was inside my house, standing by the kitchen window, sipping a cup of coffee. The coffee was warm, and I was just relaxing, looking out at the street. That's when I saw her, Karen, creeping around my driveway. She had her phone in her hand, and she was snapping pictures of my car. Click, click, click. She'd move a little, take another picture, then move again. Her face had this smirk on it, like she was some big-time detective solving a mystery. I leaned closer to the window, watching her tiptoe around like she didn't want anyone to see. What was she up to? I took another sip of my coffee and thought, go ahead, Karen. Keep pushing. She had no idea I was watching, and I wasn't going to stop her. Not yet. I wanted to see how far she'd go with this little game of hers. She stood there for a while, taking picture after picture. She'd squat down to get a shot of the tires, then stand up to snap the hood. She even walked around to the back and took a photo of the license plate. I almost laughed out loud, but I kept quiet. My coffee was getting cold, but I didn't care, I was too busy watching the Karen show. After a few minutes, she looked at her phone, nodded to herself, and walked away with that same smirk. I put my cup down and thought, what's she planning now? Maybe she was going to show those pictures to someone, like proof that my car was ruining the neighborhood. Or maybe she was just trying to scare me. Either way, I wasn't worried. She could snap all the photos she wanted, it wasn't going to change a thing. My car was staying right where it was, and I was still the guy with the secret she didn't know. Days kept going by, and Karen kept being Karen. She'd walk past my house every morning, glaring at my car like it had personally insulted her. Sometimes she'd stop and write something on her clipboard, her pen scratching fast across the paper. Other times, she'd just stand there, arms crossed, staring. The neighbors started talking about it more too. Mr. Thompson, the flower guy next door, saw me outside one day and said, she's really got it in for that car, huh? I nodded and said, yup, she sure does. He chuckled and went back to his roses. The mom across the street waved at me once and called out, Karen's still mad, huh? I waved back and said, looks like it. Everyone could see she was obsessed, but nobody knew why I wasn't freaking out. That was the fun part, my secret kept me calm, even when Karen was acting like a tornado. Then, it happened. It was a Monday morning, bright and clear outside. I'd had a good weekend, just chilling at home, and I was ready to start the week. I grabbed my keys, put on my shoes, and stepped outside to head to my car. But when I got to the driveway, my jaw dropped. My car was gone. Gone. The spot where it always sat was empty, just a patch of pavement staring back at me. I blinked a few times, thinking maybe I was still half asleep. Nope, it was really gone. I stood there, hands on my hips, trying to figure out what happened. That's when I heard a little noise, a whisper from over the fence. It was Mr. Thompson, peeking over with his watering can in his hand. Karen called the tow truck, he said in a quiet voice, like he didn't want her to hear. She told them it was an abandoned vehicle. It's gone, Jake. I looked at him, and for a second, I didn't know what to say. An abandoned vehicle? My car? The one I drove every day? I could feel my mouth hanging open, but then something funny happened. A little grin crept up on my face. I couldn't help it, I started smiling, right there in my empty driveway. Mr. Thompson tilted his head, confused. "You okay, Jake?" he asked. I nodded and said, "Oh yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for letting me know." He shrugged and went back to his flowers, probably thinking I'd lost my mind. But I hadn't. That grin wasn't because I was mad or sad, it was because I knew something big was coming. This was at the moment Karen would finally learn her lesson. She'd gone too far, and now the fun was really about to start. Can you guess what I did next? Hang tight, because things are about to get good. Let's rewind a little first, though, so you can see how it all built up to this. Those weeks of Karen getting bolder weren't just random, she was like a train picking up speed, heading straight for a wall she didn't see. The notes under my wipers? They started out small, just a couple words like "move it." But then they got meaner. One said, "This car is trash." Another one said, "You're breaking all the rules." I'd find them in the morning, stuck there with the dew, and I'd pull them off like they were nothing. Toss, toss, toss into the trash they went. I didn't even read some of them after a while. I'd just see her handwriting, laugh, and throw them away. She must have thought I was scared, but I wasn't. I knew she couldn't do anything real, until she did. That day she took pictures was a clue. I didn't know it then, but she was building her case, like a kid stacking blocks to knock them down. She wanted proof, something to show the world, or at least the HOA, that my car didn't belong. When I saw her sneaking around, I thought, she's serious about this. But I still didn't think she'd go all the way. Towing a car? That's a big move. I figured she was just bluffing, trying to make me nervous. I'd sip my coffee and watch her play detective, thinking, keep going, Karen. You're only making it better for me. And boy, was I right. She didn't just push, she shoved, and now my car was gone. Standing there in my driveway, with that empty spot where my car used to be, I felt a little spark inside. Not anger, not panic, just excitement. Karen had no idea what she'd done. She thought she'd won, that she'd finally gotten rid of the junker she hated so much. But she didn't know it was a police car, and she didn't know what happened when you messed with one. I could almost picture her, standing somewhere with her clipboard, smiling like she'd just saved the neighborhood. Oh, Karen, you poor thing. You just lit the fuse on a firework, and it was about to go boom. The neighbors were watching now too. Mr. Thompson wasn't the only one who saw the tow truck. Across the street, one of the bike kids peeked out from behind a bush and whispered to his sister. They giggled and ran inside, probably telling their mom. A lady walking her dog slowed down as she passed my house, staring at the empty spot. Everyone knew Karen had been after me, and now they were curious. What was I going to do? Was I mad? Was I going to yell at her? Nope. I wasn't going to do any of that, not yet. I had a plan, and it was going to be way better than yelling. I turned around, went back inside, and grabbed my phone. It was time to make a call, one that would change everything. But before we get to that, let's think about this for a second. Karen had been pushing and pushing, and I'd been letting her. Those nasty notes? I threw them away. The pictures. I watched and waited. Even now, with my car gone, I wasn't mad, I was grinning. Why? Because every step she took was a step closer to her big surprise. She thought she was the smart one, but I was the one holding the secret. What do you think? Should I have stopped her sooner? Or was it more fun to let her keep going until she tripped over herself? I say it was worth the wait, and you'll see why soon. So there I was, Monday morning, car gone, neighbors whispering, and Karen somewhere thinking she'd won. The air felt buzzy, like something huge was about to happen. And it was. This wasn't just about a car anymore, it was about Karen learning she couldn't boss everyone around. My little grin was growing, and I could hardly wait for the next part. Hang on tight, because this story's about to take off like a rocket. What do you think I did with that phone call? Stick around, we're getting to the good stuff. Alright, everyone, buckle up. This is the part of the story where everything explodes into action. We're in Oakwood Hills, and Karen, the bossy HOA lady, just towed my car, thinking it's some old junker. but she doesn't know it's an unmarked police vehicle, and I'm the cop who drives it. Things have been building up, her nasty notes, her sneaky pictures, and now my car's gone. It's Monday morning, and I'm standing in my empty driveway with a little grin on my face. This is it, the big moment you've been waiting for. Let's dive into the climax and the huge reveal that's about to shake everything up. Underscore 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 on. So, there I was, staring at the spot where my car used to be. The tow truck had taken it away, all because Karen called it an abandoned vehicle. My neighbor Mr. Thompson had whispered the news to me over the fence, and I could feel the excitement bubbling inside. Karen thought she'd won, but oh boy, she was so wrong. I didn't waste any time. I turned around, walked back into my house, and grabbed my phone off the kitchen counter. My fingers moved fast as I dialed a number I knew by heart, the police precinct where I work. The phone rang once, twice, and then a big, gruff voice answered. "Precinct, this is Sergeant Mike," he said. I smiled and kept my voice super calm, like I was just chatting about the weather. "Hey, Sarge, it's Jake. Someone towed my unmarked unit." For a second, there was silence on the other end. Then Sergeant Mike burst out laughing so loud I had to pull the phone away from my ear. "You're kidding me," he shouted, still chuckling. I could picture him at his desk, his big belly shaking as he laughed. "Nope, not kidding," I said. "Some lady in my neighborhood had it hauled away." He laughed even harder, and I thought he might choke on his coffee. "Oh, that's gold, Jake. Who'd be dumb enough to tow your car?" he asked. I grinned and said, "You'll see. Can you help me out?" He stopped laughing just long enough to say, all right, we'll handle it. Sit tight, kid." Then he hung up, still snickering. I put the phone down and thought, perfect. The wheels were turning now, and Karen had no idea what was coming. An hour later, I was ready. I slipped my police badge into my pocket, just a little shiny thing that proved who I really was. I didn't need my uniform or anything fancy. I was wearing my usual stuff, jeans, a t-shirt, and sneakers. I looked like regular Jake, not Officer Jake, and that was part of the fun. I grabbed my keys, locked my door, and started walking. The tow yard wasn't far, just a few blocks away, where they kept all the cars they picked up. My car was there, and so was Karen. I could feel it. This was going to be the showdown, the big face-off I'd been waiting for. My heart was beating a little faster, not because I was nervous, but because I couldn't wait to see her face when the truth came out. The tow yard was a big, dusty lot with a chain-link fence around it. Cars were parked everywhere, some shiny, some rusty, all waiting for their owners. I strolled up to the gate, hands in my pockets, acting all casual. The sun was high in the sky, and it was warm out, but I wasn't sweating. I was too excited. As I got closer, I heard voices, loud ones. And there she was, Karen. She was standing right next to my gray sedan, her arms waving around like she was directing traffic. She was arguing with a guy in a greasy shirt, the tow truck driver. I slowed down and listened, staying just out of sight for a minute so I could hear what she was saying. "This heap's been cluttering my neighborhood," Karen barked, pointing at my car like it was a pile of trash. Her voice was sharp and bossy, just like always. "It's an eyesore, a disgrace. I told you to tow it, and I'm glad it's finally gone from my street." The tow guy scratched his head, looking a little unsure. Yeah, ma'am, we got it here, but are you sure it's abandoned?" "Looks like someone drives it," he said. Karen huffed and crossed her arms. "Of course I'm sure. That lazy guy doesn't care about it. It's been sitting there forever, making our whole block look bad." She was so mad, her face was turning pink, and she kept jabbing her finger at my car. The tow guy shrugged and said, "Okay, if you say so." He didn't sound too happy, but he wasn't arguing much either. That's when I decided it was time. I took a deep breath, stepped forward, and walked right into the tow yard. My sneakers crunched on the gravel, but I kept it cool, like I was just out for a stroll. "Hey there," I said, my voice nice and easy. Karen spun around fast, her eyes narrowing when she saw me. The tow guy looked up too, surprised. "Funny thing, Karen, I said, stopping a few feet from her. I nodded toward my car. That heap you towed? It's an unmarked police vehicle. And I'm the officer who drives it. I let the words hang in the air, watching her face. Boom, that was it, the big reveal. Karen's mouth opened, but nothing came out at first. Her face went white, like all the color just drained away. She looked like a ghost standing there, her eyes wide and her hands frozen in front of her. The tow guy's jaw dropped too, and his eyes got huge, like they might pop out of his head. Ma'am, you didn't say that, he stammered, stepping back from my car like it was hot. Karen blinked fast, shaking her head. What? No, that's impossible, she sputtered. Her voice was all shaky now, not bossy anymore. She pointed at me, then at the car, then back at me. You? A police officer? No way. You're lying. She was trying so hard to believe it wasn't true, but I could see the panic starting to creep in. I smiled, nice and slow, and reached into my pocket. Not lying, I said. Then I pulled out my badge, a shiny little shield with my name and number on it. I held it up so they could both see, letting the sunlight bounce off it. Officer Jake Dawson, I said. That's me. And this car? It's mine for work. You just towed police property, Karen. I flipped the badge back into my hand and slipped it into my pocket, all calm and cool. The tow yard went dead silent. No one said a word, not Karen, not the tow guy, not even the birds chirping nearby. It was like time stopped for a second. Boom, game over. Karen's face was a mess of feelings. First she looked shocked, then mad, then scared, all in about 5 seconds. Her mouth kept opening and closing, like a fish out of water, but she couldn't find any words. The tow guy rubbed his face with his hand and muttered, oh man, this is bad. He turned to Karen and said, you told me it was abandoned. I wouldn't have touched it if I knew. Karen snapped out of her daze and yelled, I didn't know. He never said anything. How was I supposed to know? She was pointing at me again, her finger shaking. I just shrugged and said, you never asked, Karen. You just kept sticking notes and calling it junk. Guess you picked the wrong car to mess with. The tow guy looked at me, then at Karen, then at the car. So, this is a cop car, he asked, his voice all nervous. I nodded. Yup. Unmarked, so it doesn't look fancy. Helps me do my job. He groaned and kicked the dirt. Lady, you got me in trouble here. We can't tow police stuff. Karen's eyes darted around, like she was looking for a way out. I didn't mean to, she said. It's his fault for not telling me. I laughed a little chuckle that made her glare at me. Oh, come on, Karen, I said. You've been after me for weeks. You wanted it gone, and now it's here. Happy? She wasn't happy. Not one bit. Her hands clenched into fists, and she stomped her foot like a kid throwing a fit. This is ridiculous, she shouted. You tricked me. You let me think it was just some old car. I tilted my head and said, I didn't trick you. You decided all that on your own. I just let you keep going. The tow guy nodded, like he agreed with me. Yeah, ma'am, you kinda did this to yourself, he said. Karen's face turned red, now bright red, like a stop sign. She was mad, embarrassed, and totally stuck. She'd towed a police car, and there was no way to wiggle out of it. I stood there, hands in my pockets, watching it all sink in. How do you think she felt right then? Imagine being Karen for a second. You're so sure you're right, so sure you're the boss, and then bam, you find out you messed with the wrong guy. Her big plan to get rid of my junker had blown up in her face, and now she was standing in a tow yard, looking silly in front of me and the tow guy. I almost felt bad for her, almost. But after all those notes, all those stickers, all those glares. Nah, this was too good. She dug her own hole, and I was happy to let her fall in. The silence didn't last long. Karen started talking again, fast and loud. This isn't fair. You should have told me. I'm the HOA president, I have a right to know, she said. I raised an eyebrow and said, a right to know? Karen, you don't get to tow people's cars just because you don't like them. And you definitely don't get to tow mine. The tow guy piped up too. Yeah, I'm gonna need to call my boss. This is a mess. He pulled out his phone and walked a few steps away, leaving me and Karen by the car. She glared at me, her eyes all fiery, but I could tell she was rattled. Her big win was gone, and now she was the one in trouble. I leaned against my car, nice and relaxed. So, Karen, I said, what's your plan now? You got my car towed, but it's not staying here. The precinct's already on it. Her eyes got wide again. The precinct? You mean more police are coming? She asked, her voice squeaking. I nodded. Yup. They don't like when someone messes with our stuff. You might want to stick around and explain yourself. She shook her head fast. No, this is a mistake. I'll fix it, she said. But it was too late. The tow guy was already on the phone with his boss, and I could hear him saying, yeah, it's a cop car. I didn't know. Karen looked around, like she wanted to run away, but there was nowhere to go. The tow yard was fenced in, and people were starting to notice. A couple other workers came over, curious about the yelling. What's going on? One of them asked. The tow guy waved them off. Long story. Bad tow, he muttered. Karen's face got redder, and she pointed at me one last time. This isn't over, she said, but her voice wasn't so strong anymore. I just smiled and said, oh, I think it is, Karen. And that was that. The big reveal was done, and she was out of moves. So, let's wrap this part up. The tow yard was buzzing now, with the workers whispering and the tow guy pacing while he talked on the phone. Karen stood there, looking smaller than ever, her clipboard nowhere in sight. My car sat quietly behind us, still scratched and dented, but now everyone knew it wasn't junk, it was a police car, and I was the cop who'd been playing it cool all along. The air felt electric, like after a big thunderstorm. Karen's world had flipped upside down, and I'd dropped the truth like a giant surprise party. How do you think she felt? Mad? Scared? Totally lost? I bet it was all of that and more. Stick around, because this story's not done yet. We've got to see what happens next. So, there we were in the tow yard, standing by my gray sedan. Karen's big plan to get rid of my junker had just blown up in her face. She'd towed a police car, my police car, and now she knew it. Her mouth was flapping like a fish, trying to find something to say. I didn't know, she mumbled, her voice all shaky. How could I know? You never told me. She was pointing at me, her hands waving around, trying to make excuses. But it was way too late for that. The tow guy wasn't buying it either. He was still on the phone with his boss, looking sweaty and nervous. Yeah, it's a cop car, I heard him say. She didn't tell me. He kept glancing at Karen like she'd gotten him into a giant mess. And she had. The tow company wasn't happy, not one bit. See, towing a police car isn't like towing some old bike or a random truck. It's a big deal. They don't like messing with police property because it can get them in trouble. Turns out, towing a cop car without a good reason? That's a huge no-no. You can't just haul away something that belongs to the police and act like it's okay. The tow guy's boss was yelling through the phone. I could hear bits of it, like what were you thinking, and get it back now. The guy hung up and turned to me, rubbing his head. Officer, we didn't mean to do this, he said. We'll get your car back to you fast. No charge. I nodded and said, thanks. Just make it quick. Then I looked at Karen and smiled a little. She didn't smile back. Karen kept trying to talk her way out of it. This is a mistake, she said, her voice getting louder. I'm the HOA president. I was just keeping the neighborhood nice. She was stomping her foot again, like that would help. But nobody cared about her excuses. The tow guy shook his head and said, lady, you told me it was abandoned. You should have checked. Karen's face turned red, and she snapped, he tricked me. He let me think it was junk. I laughed, couldn't help it. Karen, I said, I didn't trick you. You decided all that yourself. I just let you run with it. She glared at me, but she didn't have anything good to say back. The truth was out, and she was stuck. Back at the precinct, Sergeant Mike didn't waste time. After I called him, he got the whole story, how Karen had been bugging me for weeks and finally got my car towed. He thought it was hilarious, but he also knew it was serious. "We can't let this slide, Jake," he told me later. "She messed with your unit. That's not okay." So, the police sent an official letter to the HOA. It was typed up all nice, with the precinct's logo on top, and it said something like, "On Monday, an unmarked police vehicle was towed without permission. This was caused by Karen, your HOA president. That's not allowed." It went on to say they were looking into it and that Karen was in trouble for what she did. When I heard about that letter, I grinned. Oh yeah, this was getting good. A couple days later, the news hit Karen hard. The HOA got the letter, and they weren't happy either. Turns out, Karen got a little punishment for misuse of authority. That means she used her power as HOA president in a bad way, and now she had to pay money for it. I don't know how much, but I bet it stung. She couldn't boss people around and tow whatever she wanted, not anymore. The neighbors started whispering about it too. Mr. Thompson, the flower guy, told me he saw the letter when it came in. "She's not so high and mighty now, huh?" he said with a chuckle. Across the street, the mom with the bike kids nodded at me one day and said, "Heard Karen got fined." Good for you, Jake. Word was spreading fast, and suddenly, Karen's clipboard didn't look so scary. It was just a piece of wood with paper on it, not a crown anymore. Me. I got my car back, no problem. The tow company drove it right to my house that same afternoon, all apologetic. "Sorry about this, officer," the driver said as he handed me the keys. "Won't happen again." I took the keys and said, "No worries. Just don't listen to her next time." He laughed and drove off, leaving my car right where it belonged in my driveway. It was still scratched and dented, still gray and boring, but now everyone knew it was more than that. I parked it there, same spot as always, and left it. No more hiding, no more games. Karen had lost, and I was back in business. The next morning, I stepped outside with my coffee, just like usual. The sun was up, the birds were singing, and there was Karen walking down the street with her head down. I saw her coming and gave her a big, friendly wave. "Morning, Karen." I called out, my voice all cheerful. She looked up, and her face twisted into a scowl. She didn't wave back. She didn't say anything. She just shuffled away, her shoulders all hunched, like she wanted to disappear. I sipped my coffee and watched her go, feeling pretty good. That scowl. It was all she had left. Her reign of terror, the days of bossing everyone around and sticking notes on my car, was officially over. Done. Finished. Kaput. The neighborhood felt different after that. It was lighter, like a big weight had lifted off. People weren't tiptoeing around, scared of Karen's clipboard anymore. Mr. Thompson started watering his flowers with a little whistle, like he was happier. The bike kids zoomed up and down the street, laughing louder than before. Even the lady with the dog smiled at me when she walked by. "Nice to see that car back," she said one day. "Guess Karen learned something, huh?" I nodded and said, "Yup, she sure did." Everyone could breathe again, and it felt awesome. Justice tastes sweet, doesn't it? Like a big scoop of ice cream after a hot day, cool, smooth, and just right. Karen didn't come near my house much after that. Sometimes I'd see her in the distance, walking with her clipboard, but she stayed far away from me. No more notes, no more stickers, no more knocking on my door. She'd learned her lesson the hard way, and I bet she wasn't forgetting it anytime soon. The fine probably hurt her wallet, but I think her pride took the biggest hit. She'd strutted around like a queen, thinking she could do whatever she wanted, but towing my car? That was her big mistake. Now she was just Karen, not the HOA boss, not the ruler of Oakwood Hills, just a lady who'd messed up and got caught. I kept living my life, same as always. I'd drive my car to work at the precinct, help people, catch bad guys, and come home. When I parked it in my driveway, I'd give it a little pat sometimes, like it was my buddy. "We showed her, huh?" I'd say to it, grinning. The neighbors got used to it too. The bike kids would ride by and yell, "Cool car, Jake," even though it didn't look cool at all. Mr. Thompson started joking about it. "Gonna get any more tow trucks after you," he'd say, and we'd laugh. It was our little story now, something we all shared, a tale about the day Karen picked the wrong car to mess with. One morning, I saw her again, Karen, walking past my house. It was a week or so after the tow yard showdown. I was sitting on my porch with my coffee, just chilling. She didn't look at me at first, but then she glanced up. Our eyes met, and I waved again. "Hey, Karen. How's it going?" I said, nice and loud. Her face went tight, like she'd bitten a lemon. She didn't wave back, she just turned her head and kept walking, faster this time. I chuckled and took another sip. That was her now, quiet, grumpy, and out of power. The neighborhood didn't need her bossing anymore, and she knew it. Justice wasn't just about the fine or getting my car back. It was about the feeling, the way everything settled down after the storm. Karen had pushed and pushed, thinking she was the biggest fish in the pond, but she'd swam right into a net. Me. I didn't have to yell or fight. I just let her keep going until she tripped over the truth. And when she did, it was perfect. The precinct handled the serious stuff, the HOA gave her that fine, and the neighbors stopped being scared of her. It all worked out, like pieces clicking into place. The days after that were peaceful. I'd sit outside sometimes, watching the street, and it felt good. No more tension, no more storm clouds hanging over us. The kids played, the birds sang, and my car sat there, quiet and scratched up, but still mine. Every time I saw it, I'd remember the look on Karen's face when I showed my badge, white as a ghost, eyes popping, mouth flapping. That was the best part, the moment she realized she'd lost. And every time I waved at her, scowling back at me, it was like a little cherry on top. So, that's how it ended. Karen's big mistake turned into my big win. The tow company learned to double check before hauling stuff away. The HOA learned their president wasn't above the rules. And Karen? She learned not to judge a car or a guy by how they look. I got my car back, parked it right where it always was, and kept living my life. The neighborhood was free, and justice tasted oh so sweet. What do you think? Did she deserve it? I say yes, and I bet you do too. Let's wrap this up next time with one last look at how it all turned out. So, here's the thing, sometimes, the people who act the biggest, like they're the king or queen of everything, don't know the smallest thing about who they're messing with. That's what happened with Karen. She strutted around Oakwood Hills with her clipboard, thinking she could push me around. She saw my old, scratched up car and thought, this guy's a nobody. I can boss him all I want. She barked orders, stuck nasty notes on my windshield, and even got my car towed, all because she was so sure she was right. But she didn't know the real me. She didn't see me coming, not even a little bit. My car wasn't junk, it was a police vehicle, and I was the cop driving it. When I flashed my badge at the tow yard, her whole world flipped upside down. She thought she was big, but I had something bigger tucked away, waiting for the perfect moment. Karen never guessed that the quiet guy with the beat-up car could turn the tables on her. She judged me by what she saw, some dude in jeans with a messy ride, and decided I wasn't important. Oh, how wrong she was. I didn't need to yell or fight back right away. I just smiled, peeled off her stickers, and let her keep going until she tripped over the truth. And when she did, bam! It was like a surprise party she didn't want to be at. Her face went white, her excuses fell apart, and suddenly, she wasn't the queen anymore. She learned the hard way that acting big doesn't mean you know everything. Sometimes, the person you think is small is hiding something huge, like a badge in their pocket or a secret they're saving for just the right time. What about you? Have you ever surprised someone who thought they had you all figured out? Maybe someone looked at you and decided you couldn't do much, like a teacher who thought you'd fail a test, or a kid who said you weren't fast enough to race. But then you showed them. Maybe you aced that test, or you zoomed past everyone on the track, and their jaws dropped. That's what this story's about, not letting people's wrong ideas stop you. Karen underestimated me, and I bet there's a Karen in your life who's done the same to you. I'd love to hear your story. Drop it below in the comments. Tell me about a time you proved someone wrong when they didn't expect it. It'll be awesome to read how you surprised them, just like I surprised Karen. Let's think about Karen for a second. She's not all bad, you know. She wanted the neighborhood to look nice, and that's not a terrible thing. But she went too far. She judged my car and me by how we looked on the outside, not what we really were. Maybe next time, she'll think twice before jumping to conclusions. Maybe she'll see a beat-up car and wonder, who's driving that? What's their story? Instead of just slapping a sticker on it. Judging a book by its cover or a car by its scratches got her into trouble. She got a fine, lost her big bossy power, and now she's walking around all quiet. I bet she's learned something, even if she won't admit it. And that's a good lesson for all of us. Don't be too quick to decide what someone's about. You might miss the real story hiding inside. This whole adventure started with a sunny Saturday and a lady with a clipboard. It ended with my car back in my driveway and Karen learning she's not the ruler of everything. But it's more than just a funny story, it's about standing up, even if you do it quietly. I didn't have to shout or get mad. I just waited, kept my cool, and let the truth do the talking. That's power, right there, not the loud kind, but the sneaky kind that catches people off guard. You don't always need to fight with fists or words. Sometimes, you just need to be yourself, hold your secret close, and let it shine when the time's right. That's what I did, and it worked like magic. So, what's the big takeaway here? Stay sharp, friends. Keep your eyes open and your head up. The world's full of Karens, people who think they know it all and try to push you down. But here's the secret, they don't know you, not really. You've got your own surprises, your own strengths, and they're yours to use whenever you need them. Maybe it's a talent nobody's seen yet, or a smart idea you've been saving, or just being tougher than anyone expects. Whatever it is, it's in you, waiting for its moment, just like my badge was waiting in my pocket. Don't let the Karens of the world get you down. They might look big, but you're bigger in ways they can't even guess. Picture this, you're walking through your day, and someone tries to boss you around or make you feel small. Maybe they laugh at your old shoes or say you can't do something cool. What do? You don't have to cry or yell. You can smile, just like I did, and keep going. Let them think what they want, because you know the truth. You've got your own power, your own story, and when the time's right, you'll show it. That's what I did with Karen. She thought she had me beat, but I had a surprise up my sleeve. You've got surprises too, I know you do. And when you use them, it's going to feel so good, just like it did for me when Karen's jaw dropped at the tow yard. Let's imagine Karen right now. She's probably sitting at home, staring at her clipboard, wondering where it all went wrong. She's not strutting around anymore, not knocking on doors or glaring at lawns. She's quieter, smaller, and maybe a little wiser. That fine she got. It's a reminder that being bossy doesn't always win. And me? I'm still here, sipping coffee on my porch, waving at neighbors, and parking my car right where she hates it. Every time I see it scratched, dented, and perfect, I smile. It's not just a car. It's a story, a win, a little piece of justice that rolled back into my driveway. And every time Karen walks by and scowls, I wave, because I know she can't touch me now. That's the best feeling, knowing you came out on top, not by being loud, but by being you. What about you? Where are you right now? Are you reading this at home, at school, maybe on a bus? Wherever you are, think about your own Karens. Who's tried to push you around? Who's looked at you and thought, nah, they're not much? You don't have to tell them off right away. You can wait, like I did, and let your moment come. Maybe it's a test you're studying for, or a game you're practicing to win, or just being brave when someone's mean. Whatever it is, you've got it in you. You're stronger than they think, smarter than they guess, and way cooler than they'll ever know. Don't let them dull your shine, keep it bright and save it for when it counts. This story's over for now, but yours isn't. You're out there, living your own adventures, and I bet they're awesome. Maybe you've already had a moment where you surprised someone big time, or maybe it's still coming. Either way, I'd love to hear about it. Drop your story below, tell me about that time you showed the world what you're made of. Did someone's face go white like Karen's? Did they stammer and stumble when you proved them wrong? I'm excited to read it, because I know you've got some great tales to share. Until next time, keep being you, keep being sharp, and don't let anyone, especially the Karens, get you down. Think about this as we go: the quietest kid in the room might be the strongest. The beat-up car might be the fastest. And the person everyone overlooks? They might just be the one who changes everything. That's what happened here. Karen thought she was the star, but I stole the show, not with noise, but with truth. You can do that too. You don't need a badge or a police car, just you, being awesome in your own way. So, go out there and surprise the world. I'll be cheering for you, just like I cheered for myself when Karen's reign ended. See you next time, friends. Stay cool and keep shining.